Hello everybody. Okay, today I wanted to just do a quick start guide to Space Engineers. So this includes basically if you know nothing, if you're just started to install a game and you want to know how to get started, how to do your first steps, this is the one to watch. There's a few things changed in Space Engineers over the years, so there's a few older guides that maybe aren't so relevant, so I hope this thing helps you get started. There's a huge learning curve on Space Engineers, so you can go as deep down into it as you want. You can get to the stage where you're literally programming blocks and making ships do things automated. But for now, we're just going to use it like a normal sandbox survival type game where you get started, you get your materials to build your base, and you build a ship. That's all we're going to do. First off, I just wanted to introduce you to the HUD, what is what on the HUD and things you need to pay attention to. We're going to start with the box on the left here. The start is standing and the other thing is flying, so it just gives you a hint on whether you're standing on planets, flying around. Helmet on, off. This is quite important with being on a planet. If your helmet is off, then you can breathe the air. If your helmet is on, you're using your own oxygen. Health is pretty self-explanatory. Everybody knows health is. When this goes down to 0, you die. Jetpack is, if you're on a planet, you don't need to use your jetpack. You can walk around freely. In space, you will need to use your jetpack. Using your jetpack on a planet does use quite a lot of the hydrogen that's in your backpack, so it's advisable not to use the jetpack continuously on a planet. You will run out and you'll have to constantly refill it. But it is quite helpful if you've got quite a tall building, a tall ship that you want to get up into. Dampeners are, so if you're moving in a one direction in space, something pushes you in space, you will continue to go in that direction until something stops you. If your dampeners are on, it means your jetpack will slow you to a halt on its own. So this is the preferred way to have dampeners. Keep them on, and then you're not going to crash into things very often. Lights. This does get very dark on planets and in space at times, so you will need your lights. It's the key L on your keyboard to turn your lights on and off. Your mass is how much you're holding in your backpack. This makes a difference when in ships. They do require thrust to hold a certain weight. Your speed, again, self-explanatory, how fast you're traveling. Energy. So this one I like to think of more of an electricity. It's how much battery power you have. It helps in your person, so you need energy to use your tools, and also to just walk around. If this reaches 0, you will die. Your oxygen, again, if this reaches 0, you will die. On planets, you can open your visor and breathe the fresh air in the game by the keypad J. So I'll give you a little example. My visor is open here, and when you press J, you will close it. When your visor is closed, you're using your oxygen within your backpack. You can see it starts to go down on the hood on the bottom left now. I'll keep it open for now. The other things are hydrogen. So this is your jetpack fuel. This is what you will need to fly around. In space, it's used a lot slower when you're traveling around, whereas on the planet, it does get used up quite fast. Both oxygen and hydrogen can be refilled from certain objects in the game. I'll tell you more about them later. Volume is the amount of items. It's quite related to the mass. It's how much you can hold. You can change it in the game settings. You can hold very little or hold huge amounts of volume. It just depends on what you prefer. Radio, this is when it becomes broadcastable. It's quite an advanced feature later in the game. You can connect to ships remotely and tell them to do things. And broadcasting is the same feature. You can broadcast to items and connect to remote objects. We're not going to cover much of that in this tutorial. On the right hand side over here, we have got your gravity information. So at the moment we're on a planet. You can see the representation of a planet here, and it's showing the arrow pointing down. So it tells us where our orientation of gravity will be. Now you've got artificial gravity and planet gravity. These two don't interact with each other. So artificial gravity, if you're in space and you're on a ship, you have artificial gravity on. You will walk with whichever way the arrow is pointing down when your jetpack is off. With planet gravity is always trumps artificial gravity. So if you're on a ship and you turn the ship upside down that's got gravity generation on it on a planet, you will still have planet gravity overtaking. It will still drop you to whichever way the planet is going. And oxygen, on different planets there are different levels of oxygen, so this just gives you an idea of on the planet in the atmosphere if you've got a high or a low or a zero oxygen. It makes a difference if you have your visor open or if you need to keep oxygen tanks on you. In the middle here we have your action bars, so these you can drag and drop different things into. I'll give you an example. You can drag all your different items onto this bar and select them by pressing the appropriate number. So if we want to use the drill, or we want to use a grinder, or we want to use a welder. Very similar to most games out there, to be honest. I think that's about it for the basics of how the UI works, how the HUD works when you're walking around. I just want to give you a bit of an information on how to move around on this game as well. Dead simple, similar to every other game. You've got W forward, A, S, D, moves you sideways. Same as every other game. If you played a computer game, you know how to do this. The other things are, if you're in space or if you have your jetpack on, Q will rotate you to the left and E will rotate you to the right. Just for movements. The other things are C will crouch you down when your jetpack is off, C to crouch, and space will jump. Now when your jetpack is on, space will fly upwards and C will fly down. This is quite important when you're first starting, if you're in a lander. The same controls apply to ships. So some people don't realise how to actually land their ship. It is press C just to lower the ship down. Next thing I want to talk about is the inertia dampeners on the jetpack. If you're in space or on the planet, for example, if you have a keypad Z for inertia dampeners on and off, with them on, when you travel in a direction, you will slowly come to a halt and stop yourself. You don't need to slow yourself down, you don't need to do anything. This is the preferred way to live in Space Engineers. It stops you floating around and crashing into things. With inertia dampeners off, you'll find that you actually drop out of the sky when you're on a planet. But in space, when you travel in a direction, you'll continue to travel in that direction until you hit something. So again, keep your inertia dampeners on until you start getting the hang of how to use them properly. They are quite handy for travelling long distances without using much fuel in the future. Okay, so next I just want to talk a little bit about energy and oxygen on your person. You'll notice that my energy down in the bottom left has gone down to 79.7%. This is just out of standing around and using a few tools. It will just slowly go down. To resupply yourself with energy, you want to go to a medical room. They look like this. Use the little control panel on the side and you press R or hold R down and it will restock your energy back up to full. This will also increase your health as well. If you've taken any damage, your health will go back up. The other way to get your energy back up is to get into a flight seat or a cockpit on the game. So you can, for example, we'll drag a cockpit down here, place it onto the ground, and if you look at the cockpit, press R to get in, you'll notice energy can go up. Although my health is going down because there's no oxygen inside there. Oh, we're getting attacked by meteors, it sounds like. So next is your oxygen. When you're on a planet, then you can have your visor off. As I said before, it's keypad J. to turn the helmet on and off. Keep your helmet open while you're on a planet, it's free oxygen. If you do have your helmet on, if you're in space or on a planet that doesn't have oxygen, again you can use the med bay to resupply your oxygen, but there has to be an oxygen tank connected to the med room, and we'll talk about that later on. The other way to get oxygen is to get oxygens out of a oxygen supply, what are they called again? An oxygen generator. So one of these, and you'll need tanks inside of it, and you can get oxygen from these. But I think all the respawn ships have an oxygen generator on them, and you can use them by pressing R, and there will be tanks inside them on your respawn ship. Alternatively, you can build them with the assembler. Also now, I just want to talk a little bit about the tools that are used. There are 4 types of tools. We're going to talk about the welder. Dead simple. When you go to an item that's not fully built, you hold on the welder, it will finish the item off and build it. But you do need the components in your inventory to finish it off. Alternatively, you've got the grinder. So for this one, go to an item, you grind it down, and you can see on the right hand side the status bar will go down. So this is a half built thing, and then the welder will obviously weld up. You've got the drill. This thing has an ore detector on it, so when you get within, I think it's around 10 meters or 20 meters of ore, it will detect the ore and it'll show up on the hood, so you can see what types of ore you want to drill out of the ground. There are rocks around on the planet. These are the easiest way to get ore that are sat on the surface. I suggest they're the best places to go for ore first. I'll speak a little bit more about ore later on. And now I want to talk a little bit about the inventory and the terminal. So it's pressing I on your keyboard will bring up the terminal, and you've got your character here, and you have all of your tabs along here. So each of them do pretty important parts. Inventory is self-explanatory. This is what inventory you have on the left-hand side in your person. This shows your person. On the right-hand side, when you're using a ship or accessing a cargo container, for example, you can see what is on the inventory of the cargo container. You can scroll all the way down, scroll up, hide empty. There's a few controls here that you can mess around with, but I'm going to keep it simple for now. Okay, now I just want to talk a little bit about the control panel. This is mostly related to a ship or a platform. Within the control panel, it's got a list of all the usable items, all of the parts that can be used on a ship. You'll notice this one's in red. It's because it's not finished, it's incomplete. That's the oxygen generator that I've just grinded. At the moment we're accessing the small cargo container. You can turn the item on and off, so all of your items you can turn on and off individually. These parts, I'm not going to go too much into detail. You can use them later. You can find this out when you get a bit more advanced. So next we want to talk about production. This is related to your assembler and refinery here. So these 2 blocks are associated with when you find ore in the world. You can place ore into the refinery, and the refinery will turn the ore into the chemical elements. So iron ore will be turned into iron. Iron ingots then can be put into the assembler and turned into, let's have a look, production. These different components here that will be used to build your ship. So, for example, if I hold over steel plates, one of the most basic parts you need to build in Space Engineers, this is needed in almost everything. It just needs iron ingots here, 2.10. So you'll get used to how much of each thing is used. Steel plates, sorry, don't use that much iron, but when you get to some of the other parts, thruster components, they're using platinum, gold, cobalt, and iron, and they're using quite a lot of each of them, so they get quite expensive. We'll talk a little bit more about the components in a while when we start building ships and when we start understanding how that works. What was next on the hood? Info. This isn't used very often. It comes in handy. You can rename your ships if you prefer to get into that side of things down at the bottom. This is what your ship name is. This comes in handy later when you want to remote control things and you want to understand what things are. Also, if you're trying to balance things and make things equal, you can show center of masses and gravity ranges. They're quite handy if you want to get into advanced building. For now, we're just going to stay with simple things. It does also tell you how many blocks are on your ship and thrusters, so just a little bit of information about the panel itself. I think when you're using it as a person, it doesn't give much information at all. No, just gravity, shear field, so you can see where the gravity is used. Next, we'll talk about the factions. So factions are more useful in multiplayer, not very much in single player. For factions, you can make your own faction. I think I made one here. We'll leave this faction for now. Yes. So if I join a server with a friend and we want to play together, we need to join a faction together. I'll tell you why. This is because all your items in your control panel, so for example a medical room, there is an owner. This is currently me. I can transfer the owner to somebody else if they're on the server, but most importantly, share with faction is what you need it to be on. So this means that when you do join a faction with your friends, then they... Oh, I need 3. Then... there we go. No, faction name must be at least 4. Oh, that's why we're not creating a faction name properly. If you create a faction, your friends can then click on their factions tab, click on your name of your faction, and there will be an option to join here. As the leader, you'll need to see them in this box here, click on them, and accept their invitation. After you've done that, you both can use all of the items on your ships, so you can work together and play together with all your things. Next, I want to talk a little bit about comms. Comms, again, isn't used so much. You can send messages to each other through when you're online play. If you're not in the same faction and you're maybe at war with each other, and you can send each other messages. But the other way to do this is by pressing enter on your keyboard and typing in what you need, enter, and it will come up. So that's the easiest way to do the comms. I think the comms tab is a little bit outdated now. And lastly, there is the GPS tab. This thing is really, really handy. I suggest you use it quite a lot. When you first start a base, when you first get somewhere, what you can do is you can click on the GPS tab and go new from current position. And this will put a position here, Dave #1. And what this does is puts a marker in the world. Here you can just see this little blue marker. And you can see this marker wherever you go in the whole world of Space Engineers, you'll be able to see that marker. So if you build a base and you've got a small ship, you go off looking for ore, it's quite common that people then forget where the base is. And it's a bit of a nightmare because you can't find your way home again. So I suggest you put one of these markers down very early on in the game on your base. They're also quite handy for marking ore as well. When you find types of ore, you can leave a marker. You can new from current position, click on it and rename it. And then it will leave a nice little marker that says iron, so you can find the ore again quite easily if you don't have enough room to fit all of it on your ship. That's about it for the terminal. There are a lot more advanced features, but this is all you need to know to get started on Space Engineers. In a few more episodes I'm going to talk more advanced features. Okay, I also want to talk a little bit about the world of Space Engineers, what things are, how things work. Not so long ago they added planets. that was quite a huge thing on Space Engineers. Makes the game so much better, so much more immersive, and so much more interesting. At the moment, I'm on the Earth-like planet. There are two other types of planets in the game. You can see up there in the sky, you can actually see Mars. I think if you look closely, you can just about see the alien planet far in the distance. These things are very, very far away. If you get in your ship and fly, it will take quite a long time to fly there. It's possible to build jump drives, so you can jump faster. Again, it's more advanced. We won't talk about it right now. So each planet, on the system settings, as a normal standard set out, each planet has one moon also. I don't think we can see the moon. The moon is probably on the other side of the planet. The way this planets and the sun work in Space Engineers is the planets and the moons are all static. They will not move at all. It's the sun that rotates around all of our planets. They've done this just because the complicated system of making a moving planet and moving moons would be a nightmare for the programming the game. Maybe in the future a game may come out where this is possible, but right now the technology is not available to do it. So the sun will move. You can specify how fast it moves. I think the default setting is around 2 hours, so you'll get 1 hour of day and 1 hour of night time. This makes a difference for your solar panels, charging them up. In space, nobody can hear your scream. So we have asteroids in space. These, I think a normal default setting is a procedural generated system. You can choose how much and how little they will be generated. While in space, that is the easiest way to get ores, to find these asteroids and find the ores on them. They will generate as you move, so they're in random sort of generations. There are a few scenarios you can make in space where there are set asteroids already built, and these things are normally bigger and more interesting looking than the procedural generated asteroids. So if you prefer just to play in space and not be too fussed with playing on planets, these make quite good scenarios, but they are limited what you can do, and planets are so beautiful, it's well worth having them on. So the other thing to mention about the world are the entities in the world. So within the Earth planet, we have, I think they're soon to be called wolves. Currently, they're cyber dogs. When they were introduced, they came with a bit of a problem. Not many people liked them so much, but they do add a little bit of difficulty if you want a hardcore mode. That will spawn small wolves around the planet, and they just come charging in and attack you. You've got a machine gun, so you can mow them all down if you feel a bit cruel mowing down the wolves, but they will eat you if you don't. So at the moment, I pretty much always play this game without wolves turned on, because if you're just trying to build a nice base and these things keep biting your ass, then you're not a happy chappy. Also, there are other entities on other planets out there. I won't tell you much about them because it's much more fun to get out there, find them, and be a bit freaked out when you do find them. And also, you do have what's called pirates in the game. These aren't like the buccaneer sword-wielding pirates you might think of. These are... it's basically an NPC player that will play in the game. There are ships that have been built by the creators of Space Engineers and other things, and other players, I think, are added. These are completely controlled by a computer player. They will attack you if you go close to them. I think there's a few scenarios you start the Earth Easy Start. There is a pirate base that spawns quite close to you. There's a few complicated ways they work. It is possible that they can spawn, they use their antennas and they spawn in small ships, and the small ships will come and find you and hunt you down. It makes the game a little bit more interesting. The AI on these pirates is not very intelligent at the moment. I know that they're working on it, and I know that they plan to add some interesting things in the future of Space Engineers, but right now they're basically a bot that can fly towards your direction, and they have turrets on them, so they will shoot at you. If you do have pirate base is enabled or one close by, do make sure you've got turrets on your platform and make sure that you've got defense against them. But for the simple way of starting a game, I would suggest just not having them on, avoiding it until you really understand how to play the game a little bit better. The other thing about the pirates is later in the game you can find there's trader ships that will fly around out in space. When you get close to them, they'll come up as a red arrow on your HUD. And it's a lot of fun to build small combat ships and try and capture these ships. They do have a lot of interesting loot. If you're not one for mining, if you don't enjoy mining so much, it's possible to find mining NPC pirate ships out there that you can find, take down, steal, convert to your own ship and bring a big haul of ores back to your station. It's quite a good way of living if you're not a miner. So next I want to talk about ship sizes. There are three sizes, if you will, of ship. There is a small ship, which is this size over here. This is usually the best example, the best way to start off is building these small ships. You can see this square block that I'm using right now is the size of a small ship block. These are a lot cheaper and a lot easier to build. They're quite nice just to get started, get your miner or your gatherer or whatever you want it to be off to start. Secondly, you've got large ships. In order to change between large ships and small ships, you press the R on your keyboard and it will change to ship size when you're in building mode, obviously. This is the same square that I showed you on the small ship on the large scale. There's also something called a platform. If you build a large ship and you go onto the info tab, you can convert to a platform or a station. So this is the difference between a moving large ship and a static large ship. With the station it won't move, so if you build it out in space it'll stay exactly where it is. It can't be pushed, can't be moved. Whereas if you build a large ship out in space and you don't put engines on it, it will start drifting around and floating, and if you crash into it or bump into it with another ship, then they start floating everywhere. So yeah, keep to your stations if you want a place to latch onto, and if you're building a ship, make sure it has engines. I think there isn't so much more to speak on the sizes of ships. We'll talk a little bit about how ships work. So a ship requires fuel, which can come in the varieties of a battery, which is one of these things. By the nature of building these things, it will have energy once you've started to, once you've built the thing. So it'll start with like a half, I think it's around a half or so much percentage of energy in there. The batteries can be recharged by reactors or solar panels. So moving on to reactors, I'll drag one down here. A reactor uses something called uranium, which is an ore that you'll find in the world. If you place uranium ingots, the uranium needs to be processed first by the refinery from uranium ore into uranium ingots, and then if you place the uranium ingots into the nuclear reactor, it will provide power. I think the batteries do provide a little bit more power. They can chuck out more power per second than a reactor, but a reactor is a little bit more stable and they last a lot longer. So these are two ways of having power on your ship. With the solar panels, this thing will be obviously recharged by the sun, and this will put charge into the battery. Having a solar panel on its own is possible, but it requires sunlight always to work. Whereas if you put a battery on there, it will charge the battery up during the daytime, and during the night time you can use the battery to live off. These things are really important with making your first base. You need to have a medical room. So this is where you can spawn. If it hasn't got power, then you won't be able to spawn on your base. So it's really important to have a solar panel with a battery and a medical room together, or otherwise if you die you won't be able to respawn. We also want to talk a little bit about hydrogen on the ships. Depending which thrusters are, I'll talk about those in a second, you may need to have hydrogen on your ship, and arguably also oxygen. If you're flying into space, you will need a way of resupplying your own oxygen in your person, otherwise you will die. So both of these things are using the oxygen generator, which is this block over here. You can put them on a small ship and it is much smaller. If you have one of these on your ship, then at least you can put ice in there and turn it into oxygen and hydrogen. Again, if you've got hydrogen thrusters on your ship, it needs hydrogen to use the thrusters. You can also put oxygen tanks on there, and also hydrogen tanks, so this is like a storage of the hydrogen and the oxygen, so you can keep running with it. What next? So we'll talk a little bit about the engines. Yeah. So the engines, there are 3 varieties of engines in Space Engineers currently. They're called thrusters, and we have the small ion thruster, large ion thruster. Small and large are just how much thrust they will get. Ion thrusters are only to be used in space. These use electricity or battery power or energy from your reactor to create thrust. They are powerful enough, it will get you around. Hydrogen thrusters can be used in space and on planets. These things are really powerful. I think one large one of these will mostly get a few quite large ships out of atmosphere into space. It is possible with a small ship to get into space with the small hydrogen thrusters also, depending on the weight of your ship. And we have atmospheric thrusters, large and small. These things use power, use electricity to thrust, and they will only work on a planet. They will, I don't know how high they will go, but the higher from the planet you will go, the more or the less power they will have. So you get to a certain stage where they just won't thrust at all, and you'll fall back to Earth. Luckily, they'll come back down to thicker atmosphere and they'll start working again. So they're your 3 types. With the hydrogen thrusters, you will need a constant supply of hydrogen to them, like we were just talking about with the oxygen generator. It will create hydrogen from ice, so you put ice into the oxygen generator, and it will turn it into hydrogen. If you place a hydrogen tank on your ship, it will create hydrogen in there, and these things need to be linked together using conveyors and conveyor tubes. So only the hydrogen thrusters need to be linked with conveyors. All the other thrusters do not need to be linked by conveyors, only the hydrogen. With conveyors, this is... I think I will do a separate little area on conveyors. It's simply put, you connect these orange, yellow squares together. Everything can be connected with these tubes, which I'll do a little bit on in a while. So next, I think what I need to do is show you exactly how to get started in Space Engineers with building a base, what you need, and how to do this. I've told you that the simple ways to get started are using a medical bay, a battery, and a solar panel. They're the bare minimum necessary things you need to live on a planet. The next really necessary things is a refinery and an assembler. I know that all of the respawn ships, or most of the respawn ships at least, do come with all of these items in them. They come with a med bay, a power supply as such. It's not always a battery, it can just be a reactor, a refinery, and an assembler. providing you've got all of these things, you can survive. The next thing you'll want to do once you get a base started is to build a small ship and able to travel around the planet, find ores and bring ores back to your main base. There are a few ideas that people come up with. You can build a traveling base on huge wheels, so you don't have to fly there and back to the ores. You can just drive your base to the ore. But at the moment, I found wheels can be slightly buggy on planets, and going up and down big mountains can be quite hazardous. And if you roll your base and things get destroyed, you end up going back to square one. So I always like to start with just a simple, solid platform with the things that you need, and then build a small ship, something that you can travel around with, pick up the ores, and survive. Anyway, what I'll do is I'll move on to the next episode that will just show how to get started with landing a craft, getting onto a planet, how to build your first platform, then moving on to how to build ships, how to get around and do the things you need to do. I hope there's been a little bit of good information for you on the necessary things you need with space engineers, how to move, how to live, and what's involved in the world. Please watch my next episodes on how to get started and how to build your first base from landing a ship. Please give me a like and subscribe if it has been useful. I will be adding more and more of these. Yeah, thanks very much for watching.